are now entering the Pain Pod, sponsored by the Chronic Pain Association of Canada. Are you ready to know what you don't know about chronic pain? We're shining a light on the good, the bad, and the very ugly about living with pain in Canada. No hype, no hysteria, just the truth. And now, here's your host, Anne-Marie Gatto.
Welcome, Pain Potters, to our very first audio-visual podcast. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Zencastr for helping us every step of the way with their platform. So if all goes well, today you'll see my guest and myself. Please let me introduce Mr. Nathan Augeard. He's a physiotherapist in Quebec and the founder of Physio Connection, a Canadian network aiming to connect people living with pain with qualified physiotherapists. He is also a PhD candidate in rehabilitation sciences at McGill University. So congrats for that. Nathan's research focuses on improving how physiotherapy students learn to manage pain across Canadian universities. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited too. So let's just dive in like we always do. Our listeners, those who have not been to a physiotherapist or, have never been with someone else, I think we would all like to know what exactly is the role of physiotherapy in pain management these days?
Yeah, physiotherapy has definitely a really important role in pain management. If you want, it's really focused around function and getting back to doing the things you enjoy doing. So this focus on function takes place through a lot of different things. So we introduce movement, activity, but also through helping people develop the self-efficacy and the belief that they can do the movement through doing it. So there's a lot of education
Mm-hmm.
beyond just the movement.
Right. So a lot of psychological education
Mhm.
around also helping that person's body to move better or differently in a more helpful way.
Yeah, exactly. So this notion of understanding, if we understand pain better,
Mm-hmm.
this will mean that we have a better understanding of what we can do and what we cannot do, and that really helps us inform, the treatment plan that we get together, and informs us about the steps required to achieve the goals we want to do. So that's where this notion of understanding and knowledge is really important beyond just the movement. It's really helpful for any plans they might have into their life on how to implement the treatment.
How to implement it. Okay. So I don't know if you're a person in pain, but I certainly am. And I know many people in pain. And we all know that there's so many current gaps in pain management these days. So we would like to know how, if at all, could physiotherapy maybe help to fill that gap or one of those gaps even?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think it's a shame that there are so many gaps in pain management. But I think that physiotherapy as a profession is really well positioned to help fulfill these gaps. And perhaps the one I see the most in clinic is the gap between passive and active care or active approach to pain management. A lot of people living with pain, unfortunately, only receive care passively. It just, oh, take this medication or just read this and we'll do this to you and you'll get better.
Right.
But we know, like any other chronic conditions, that you need to have an active role in your treatment to develop the skills to manage it yourself. Um, and so having a approach that is active and that really puts the patient in the center is key. And I think physiotherapy is really well positioned because, yeah, we could give you a few exercises and be done with it. But
Mm-hmm.
really good physiotherapists in pain management kind of take the time to understand what are the movements, the things that make sense to you, that are important for you in your day-to-day life. What are your goals? And then based on that, we develop together a treatment plan that is active and that is building towards these goals.
Right. And I know, from my own life and from my work as a psychotherapist, that if someone has an active role in their recovery, let's say, they feel more empowered. This is a very good thing. Not so helpless, not so hopeless, but maybe I can do something about this. Maybe I can start to help myself as well.
Exactly.
Right, and it's always a very powerful thing when someone realizes that they can take part in their healing.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see, movement and physiotherapy. What are some of the barriers, and I'm sure there are many, to having people to engage with movement again with their pained body? And when you can acknowledge what these barriers are, how do you begin to help your patients overcome them?
Yeah, I think that movement is a really important piece. It has often, as you mentioned, barriers to actually using it in your day-to-day life. And the main reason that we see in clinic is really, I have so much pain already. Why are you asking me to move? Because it's going to give me more pain. Um, so I think there are two key pieces here. So the first one is about understanding the value of movement and activity with regards to pain management. And that's really through talking with the patient, maybe explain a bit more why do you want to move? Why do you want this to do this movement? That might not be the most intuitive thing to do right now when you have pain. So once we have this understanding that movement is really key to achieve most of the goals that people want to achieve, then this really kind of helps you go through the first barrier of conceptually why are we doing exercises. Then there's the practical application of that is how do I do exercise if I have pain? And
Right.
I think this is where we need to reconceptualize the notion of exercise. It's not necessarily going for a run, doing 10 push-ups, doing this physio exercise. Um, I like to use the term movement or activity because it could be as simple as going for a walk, or if you're already doing a bit of cycling, it could be as simple as that. So it doesn't have to be complex. And the way we do to try to find the thing that do not hurt more than usual is to really try to get an understanding of what are patients already doing. So what are you doing in your life already? And
Mhm.
let's use that as a baseline. Okay. And once we have this baseline, we can then increase slowly over time until we reach, step or comfortable. This is, enough that you can go about and do all the things you want to do. And then now we can look at another goal. So it's really about finding, what are people already doing? What is making sense for them to be doing? And then how can we combine this into a gradual treatment plan that has, step-by-step process?
Right, step by step is the key, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Not to become overwhelmed. It's you can certainly like you have to get something down into manageable bites for them to be able to have some success.
Yeah,
Because if you take on too much too soon and it's a big failure, then everything's going to go sideways, right?
definitely. I
So
think it's really
definitely,
important for a lot of different reasons. So as you mentioned, there's this almost psychological or emotional attachment to if I get a lot of little achievements, I'm going to feel better, more enticed to keep going. Versus if I have a big task and I do 90% of it, but I don't complete it, I'm going to feel worse. So there's this emotional attachment to achieving small steps, but also from a gradual perspective of simply the body, doing little steps means that you have a way to go back and be like, okay, this is where it went wrong. Let's go back maybe one notch down rather than having those big gaps where we don't know exactly what happened. Why do you have a flare up? So understanding those really in detail really helps us understand, what we can do better in the future.
right, understood. Okay, so the biopsychosocial model. That's a mouthful. We've been hearing it a lot more in recent years. So, how do physiotherapists use this model? Like, let's say, how do they use it for an assessment for someone to see what it is they're dealing with, and then how would you use it to help with the treatment planning for that person?
Yeah, so it definitely is a really important concept in pain management. And for the people who haven't heard this term before, it's simply saying that there's more to pain than just the biology behind it. So you might have damage that is driving pain, but we know there are a lot of other factors. Simply just the context that you're in, the stress that you might be experiencing, did you sleep well, your diet, all these things are going to play a role in the pain experience. And so, as physiotherapists, we're experts in movement. So be this is going to be the area that we'll be focusing on. But we can also dig a bit and highlight the other areas that might need additional help. So, if we think, based on a questionnaire, on chatting with a patient, that they might need some psychological help for depression, which we know is linked with chronic pain. Obviously, we don't have the competencies to deal with that, but we can highlight it and say, maybe you should talk to this person and refer them for adequate care. So in the assessment process, we're really keen to, not only understand what people can do from a physical aspect, but get a broad understanding of them as a person. How is pain affecting their lives? And through that, seeing, is there things that we could be doing? And then are there people that it should be seeing as well? And
Right, and that's excellent because the psychosocial aspect is where I come in. So anyone who is coming to me for chronic pain management, that is the part that I can work with, not the biological part. So it's really important to get the whole model in there, everything, so we're not missing anything for a person, correct?
yeah, definitely. And it's also, if we look at the data, there are a lot of people living with pain that don't feel listened to, don't feel validated. And you cannot really listen to someone to their and understand where they're coming from without having a big, seeing the big picture. And this goes through taking the time to uncover, what actually makes sense for them. How is pain affecting them in their whole lives? Because it's not just, oh, my back hurts, but it's my back hurts, which means that I can't work and I'm worried about my financial situation, or, I have grandkids now and I will never be able to play with them. How does that make me feel? So it's really a lot to unpack here. Um, and it's a lot more complex than just back pain. You can see how many factors are going to play a role. And it's really important for us to recognize this because this helps us make a treatment plan that makes more sense. So rather than just having a treatment plan that is do these exercises because I said so as a physiotherapist, we switch to these are exercises that will help you get to, playing with your grandkids again in this case, or whatever other example I gave beforehand, going back to work. These are all things that we can really integrate in the treatment plan to make it biopsychosocial and make it relevant and meaningful to the people living with pain.
Right. So, so I'm sorry if I'm asking you to repeat.
No
So the
worries.
biopsychosocial model, not mouthful there.
Mm.
So you clearly are using it to assess people and to see if they might need to see someone else as well, which is fantastic because we want to treat the whole person.
Mhm.
So did you just explain how you use it in your treatment planning? Like you want to look at that whole person's life and integrate their experiences and perhaps opportunities and relationships and make sure that all of this is part of the treatment planning.
Yeah, definitely. So that's really the idea behind understanding, the person as a whole, is that we can then together as a team build a treatment plan that makes sense beyond just this exercise because I said so as a physiotherapist. It
Right.
really switches the focus to exercises that are useful from my perspective as a physiotherapist, but also meaningful to the patient in the bigger picture. What do they want to achieve beyond having less back pain? Is it, going back to work? Is it playing with their kids? Is it doing that sport? Um, so it's really important in the treatment planning from a physiotherapy perspective.
Yeah, and if it's meaningful for that person, then they're certainly more apt to become actively participating and taking their role in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk about pacing if we can. I mean, this is such an important thing. We see this all the time, and I see this all the time. We might have someone with a certain condition, and then they feel really good today. So they do, five different things today because they
Mm.
feel great. And then tomorrow they're going to crash because they've overdone it. They're now in more pain than they would have been otherwise. They're exhausted. So even the ability to cope with the pain goes down, and it's just kind of like a vicious cycle like that. So, what is the role of physiotherapists and pacing? Because that is so important.
Yeah. So pacing is really the idea of breaking one step into smaller steps, so that you can then spread them out over a longer period of time and avoid, as you were saying, maybe a big flare up where you feel good, you do a lot more than normal, and then have this big flare up in pain, which means that you don't do much for the next few days. And that can be really challenging for people to live through that, boom bust cycle where you have a lot of pain, flare up, and then not much. So one of the strategies to kind of reduce the likelihood of having flare-ups like this is to break the steps down, break the task down into smaller steps. And so this would make it more manageable, bit by bit. People can go and take breaks. It might even be spread out over a few days rather than doing all in one day. And the idea behind this is that we can spread the load more evenly so that we don't trigger this flare up there. The issue that often we see in clinic is that when people are told about pacing, um, they are kind of told about it in a death sentence kind of way. It's going to be this until the rest of your life.
Oh
But that's
no.
not really a good representation of what we do in clinic. But rather, this is a temporary state that we really want to kind of establish the baseline, saying this is what we can do, this is the load we can tolerate right now. And then over time, the idea is to increase how much you can do. So it might be challenging initially to implement pacing, and might be a bit boring when you feel good not to do as much as you want to. But having this bigger picture of this is not going to be this for the rest of my life, but actually it's a step towards getting better and being able to do more, makes it more useful for people.
I quite agree. Pacing is so important. I think we've all been there when we have those great days and we overdo it and then crash and then it doesn't feel good. Yeah, pacing is
Yeah.
really no matter what you're doing or your pain disorder. So recovery. I mean, let's face it, we never talk about recovery with chronic pain because it's got the word chronic in it, which means goes on and on. If we're talking about acute pain, that's a little different.
Mhm.
Then that we hope to have an end date in sight if that is what you're feeling. But chronic pain, what 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 can recovery mean with regards to chronic pain and the role of physiotherapy in helping to achieve that?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, in acute pain, recovery is a lot more easy to define objectively. This is when you can do this movement or lift that weight. But in chronic pain, it's a little more complex, and I want to say it's a little more individual. So people will have different meanings attached to this word. And as a physiotherapist, it's really important to explore what does it mean for you to recover from chronic pain. Where do we set this threshold? Are this is you're good to go now. Um, and in practice, what we see, the first thing is that people often have goals beyond having less pain. So having less pain is a big preoccupation, but a lot of people feel like I want to have less pain because, and there's a bigger goal behind it. I want to be able to enjoy time with my family. I want to be able to go on walks with my friends. So these are the things that are even more meaningful, I want to say, than just, and I say just between quotation marks, just reducing pain. Once we have this understanding of these are the kind of higher level goals, we can start working with them towards them directly. How can we build towards the things that are actually really meaningful to you as a person? Um, and once we get there, we build there, oftentimes we notice that pain actually falls into the background. So it might not be, away forever. It might just be reduced in the background. But when people achieve things that I actually want to do, then after time it matters a lot less. So that's where physiotherapist is really focusing on is what can we do in terms of goal? How can we help you get there? And then the pain oftentimes reduces in the background. So that's really one of the key elements. The other element is about um, being active, but having the self-efficacy to manage pain on their own. And that's the case for any chronic disease, but in case of chronic pain, it's true as well. This idea of do you have the skills, the knowledge, the confidence even to be able to go about your life and know how to manage it yourself? So, and this is really big in physiotherapy because we really want to build the skill set with patients so that at some point they might still have pain, they might still have flares, but they feel fully comfortable in I know how to break down a goal into small steps. I know what to do when I have a flare. I know what I should be doing and what I should, try to limit for a certain time. And at this stage, we might see them every 6 months just to catch up, just to make sure they stay on the right path. But after time, they feel this is a recovery in the sense that they're able to go about living their life and have the skill set to manage it.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily mean someone is going to be pain free forever, but it could fall away in the background, as we would love it too, of course.
Exactly.
But it's very crucial to have the skills and the tools and the strategies that we need to help ourselves when we're in a flare or things are not going so well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on with me. It was very informative because I didn't know a lot about physiotherapy, really. And if anyone would like more information, how would they contact you, Nathan?
Yeah, I think the easiest would be to either look on our website, physioconnection.ca, or try to find a page on Instagram and Twitter, and Facebook as well. We share a lot of information about pain management and physiotherapy. So even if you're just curious to learn more, you can head out there, and we have a lot of content and resources for you.
Okay, so physioconnection.ca.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And maybe one day you'll agree to join us again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Pain Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a future show. Share this with your friends, and if you're so inclined, give us that 5-star review and comment. We hope these podcasts motivate you to get involved with us at chronicpaincanada.com. Until next time.